Objectives of today's lecture are to classify the neurological disorders and to determine the global burden of disease, to identify the causes of neurological disorders, then briefly discuss these diseases, and we'll analyze the prevention strategies and interventions to reduce the impact of neurological disorders, and briefly illustrate the management of a neurological emergency. So what are neurological disorders? Neurological diseases or disorders are the diseases of brain, spine, and the nerves that connect them. So the neurological system consists of the brain, spine, and the nerves. You know this very well. And there are more than 600 diseases of nervous system, and they may include tumors, epilepsy, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, and multiple disorders. So, and mental disorders, on the other hand, are psychiatric illnesses or diseases which appear primarily as abnormalities of thought, feeling, or behavior, producing either distress or impairment of function. So psychiatric disorders are also included in this. So the neurological disorders are divided into psychiatric diseases and the nervous system disease. The pathophysiology is, why do patients have alteration in cognitive system? So obviously when there is some alteration in the cognitive system, then only the patient realizes and goes to a clinic or the doctor to consult that there is some problem in the cognitive system. So there may be multiple causes. There may be structural lesions in the brain, which may be tumors, or there may be trauma due to road traffic accident or any other accident, maybe fall. Then toxic metabolic states, these include anoxia, complete absence of oxygen, or acidosis, that is too much of acids in the body fluids, or due to excessive loss of bicarbonates and then buildup of carbon dioxide. Acidosis, briefly, this is acidosis when there is a buildup of acids in the body fluids and this may affect the metabolic system, the respiratory system, and then the cardiac event. And then hypoglycemia when there are low glucose levels. So these may affect brain. Toxic metabolic states may also affect brain. Then the cardiovascular system, shock or cardiac arrest due to any reason may also affect brain. Respiratory system, COPD, toxic gases, maybe exposure to gases or anything. Infections, meningitis, infection of meninges, or sepsis due to any cause. Any infection in the body which may lead to sepsis may affect brain as well. Then the drugs, narcotics, and the depressant drugs may affect brain. So these were the some causes which may alter our cognitive system, and that tells us that there is some problem in the brain. The journal assessment findings. The initial assessment when a patient comes to ER or a clinic is done, and this tells you that how much the cognitive system is affected. So AVPU, that is alert, the patient is alert, conscious or not, and then voice, pain, sensory system, we check that is the patient responsive to, then or the patient is unresponsive, that he cannot respond to anything. Then the general appearance of the patient, is the patient conscious, able to sit up, or patient is not conscious. Then we go for speech. Is speech clear? Patient is able to speak complete sentences, or he or she is unable to speak. Then skin and facial drooping, that may be due to nerve damage. So we go and check this. Then the main is the airway, breathing and circulation, that the patient is unconscious but the patient is alive or not. This you must have gone through in your clinics, the Glasgow coma scale, general assessment finding, the nervous system status. This tells us the nervous system status. We see the eye opening, and then we grade it, the verbal response of the patient, the motor response of the patient, and then we calculate the points. Areas to be evaluated when a neurological patient is being examined: the mental status, awareness and interaction with the environment of the patient, and then we go and check the motor function and balance, and there are certain tests for this. Then sensory examination, there are certain tests for sensory examination also that you must have done in your clinics. Here I'm discussing these just to recall what is the nervous system, what are the nervous system disorders and how do we evaluate them. And then we go and check certain reflexes to see if the patient is responding or not. So now we come to our topic, that is, what is the global burden of disease? The global burden of disease study is a comprehensive regional and global research program of disease burden. So this is a program, comprehensive, that assesses the mortality and disability from major diseases, injuries and risk factors. So this is a whole study, and this is done to check the risk factors of major diseases and then the mortality and disability due to certain injuries and major diseases. Global burden of disease study or global burden of disease is a collaboration of over 1,800 researchers from 127 countries. So this is not like that a certain region is doing and other is not doing, but this is given by WHO, and all the regions described by WHO, those 7 regions, they are included in this, and certain countries are included in a certain region which have the same environment and the same risk factors. So how they are divided into regions? Global burden of disease regions are groups of countries that are geographically close and epidemiologically similar. So when certain countries are geographically close, then you can say that they may have similar environment, similar risk factors, right, for certain diseases. And epidemiologically similar means the risk factors are same. The high income North America global burden of disease region, for example, contains USA and Canada, and then the South Asia global burden disease region contains Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, and Pakistan. So you can see that those are high income countries, and then the South Asia global burden disease region, they are all the low income countries, including Pakistan. So we come in this South Asia global burden disease region. The global burden disease region are themselves grouped into global burden disease super regions which have similar cause of death patterns. So when there are similar patterns of death, similar patterns of disease, similar risk factors, they are grouped together. Burden of neurological disorders. The neurological disorders are the leading cause of disability. So the most common cause of human disability in the world today are the neurological disorders due to any reason. Maybe tumors, maybe accidents, maybe other diseases, but the leading cause of disability in the world today is due to some problem in the brain, spine, or nerves. The second most common cause of mortality worldwide, and the second most common cause of death worldwide. Mortality is death. So the and the cause of almost 1 in every 10 deaths. So every 10 people dying, one is dying due to the neurological cause. Neurological disorders included in the neuropsychiatric category contribute to 2% of global burden of disease. So the psychiatric disorders cause 2% of total disease. Neurological disorders constitute 6.3% of global burden of disease. Then the country-wise neurological disorders contribute to 10.9% in high-income countries, 8.7% in middle-income countries, and 4.5% of low-income countries of global burden of disease. Why this is like that? Because maybe the dietary factors may be the reason, or any other risk factors which may lead to this percentage. To assess the burden of disease, the 1990 Global Burden of Disease study used a time-based metric that measures both premature mortality. Premature mortality is early death due to a neurological disease. So years of life lost because of premature mortality, that is, if a person if he was well, he must have died at the age of 70 or 80. He died before because of this neurological disease. And the disability, the years of healthy life lost as a result of disability, weighted by the severity of the disability. The sum of these two components, disability adjusted life years, when we add these, both the metrics or measures, the premature mortality, that is the years of life lost because of premature mortality, and the years of life lost due to disability. When we sum these components, we get this figure, that is disability adjusted life years. This provides a measure of the future stream of a healthy life, years expected to be lived in full health. So lost as a result of incidence of specific diseases and injuries. So this disability adjusted life years provides a measure of the future stream of healthy life lost as a result of incidence of specific diseases and injuries. So this is the component which we use to calculate this. Again, to clarify this, disability adjusted life years refer to years of healthy life lost due to premature death and disability, calculated as the sum of years of life lost and years lived with disability due to neurological disorder. So 1 DALY equals 1 lost year of a healthy life. So a person, when he has a neurological disease, so 1 DALY equals to 1 lost year of a healthy life. So this is how it is calculated. 1 DALY can be thought of as 1 lost year of healthy life and burden of disease as a measure of gap between the current health status and an ideal situation where everyone lives into old age free from disease and disability. So this gives us a clear picture how we can calculate this. Neurological disorder as a percentage of total DALYs by WHO region. So worldwide, you can see here all the neurological disorders are listed. Epilepsy, which causes seizures, then Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common type of dementia, then Parkinson's disease, which is a progressive neurological disorders, and most common symptom is tremors, then multiple sclerosis, migraine headache, cerebrovascular diseases, poliomyelitis, which you know is an infection, and then tetanus, meningitis, Japanese encephalitis. So the most highest, you can see the Delhi's lost are due to cerebrovascular diseases around the world, that is 3.46. And if you go in the regions, the African region, American region, Southeast Asian region, European region, Eastern Mediterranean regions, and the Western Pacific, again you can see here that cerebrovascular diseases has the highest value. Europe has the highest value, then Western Pacific, and then American region. So this is how we can estimate the years of life, healthy life lost around the world. Number of DALYs for neurological disorders. This is, they have given the year wise and what we are expecting in 2030. Again, the highest percentage here or the highest number of DALYs lost are due to cerebrovascular diseases, and it is expected to increase up till 2030, right? So certain measures should be taken, the preventive strategies, the health promotion strategies to control this. The estimated numbers which we are expecting are high. This shows the first diagram. A shows the number of healthy years lost due to certain neurological disorders, then meningitis, migraine, and stroke. So stroke has the highest percentage, 47.3%, then migraine 13.1%. So there are certain type of headaches which include migraine, then meningitis, infection of meninges. There may be multiple reasons for this even. And then there are other causes, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, and multiple sclerosis, motor neuron, medication overdose, epilepsy. So these all come under one heading, but the most common cause here again we can see is stroke. And then the death, the diagram B shows the death due to certain neurological diseases. So here we can see mostly the people die due to stroke, after that is the cerebrovascular disease. So 67.3% die due to stroke. Then the second is Alzheimer's disease and the dementias, 20.3%. And the other diseases, the death due to other neurological disorders is about 13%. So these are the figures given by WHO, the burden of disease. Then here they have given due to different disorders or diseases, percentage of total DALYs for selected diseases. Here also you can see the neurological disorders have the highest number, right? After that, then we have HIV, AIDS, and malignant neoplasms, and then other diseases, but highest being the neurological disorders. So we can see and say that neurological disorders, like the WHO says, according to estimates, is a second leading cause of disability in the world. The above analysis demonstrates that neurological disorders cause a substantial burden because of non-communicable conditions such as cerebrovascular disease, Alzheimer's, and other dementias, as well as communicable conditions such as meningitis and Japanese encephalitis. So in neurological diseases, there are certain communicable and certain non-communicable diseases. As a group, they cause a much higher burden than digestive, respiratory, and malignant neoplasms. Causes of neurological disorders, we'll briefly go that since these group of diseases have this much effect on humans, so what are the major causes of these disorders? When we know the causes, we know the risk factors, then only there can be preventive strategies to control this, right? So the malnutrition directly or indirectly affects a variety of organ systems, including central nervous system. So malnutrition generally affects all the systems of the body, be it undernutrition or even obesity. So obesity is also included in malnutrition. It is causing certain diseases, and certain diseases are caused by the undernutrition. The nervous system develops in utero and during infancy and childhood, and in these periods it is vulnerable to macronutrient deficiencies. So mother's diet should be optimum when she is pregnant, so that the child is not born with the deficiencies. And then during infancy and childhood, the child should be taken care of so that he does not develop these deficiencies. The diet is very important. Mother's diet, and then the infant's diet, and the children's diet overall. Certain diseases are caused due to certain food compounds like alcohol, fetal alcohol syndrome. If the mother is taking alcohol, the child may have fetal alcohol syndrome, retarded mental development in childhood, and Wernicke's encephalopathy due to deficiency of vitamin B1. Then the child may also be born with visual problems and peripheral neuropathy. So alcohol may affect a baby all over. If the mother is alcoholic or taking alcohol, she should be very careful, because this has multiple effects on the baby. Then Lathyrus sativus, this is a kind of grass pea, or it is called Indian pea. It is found in India, and this may cause spastic paraparesis due to overdose, because this plant is used in homeopathic medicines and all these. So there may be overdose. Because of that, a patient may suffer from spastic paraparesis. Then cyanogenic glycosides from insufficiently processed cassava roots. So this is also a plant, and its overdosage may cause this sponzo or tropic ataxic neuropathy. This is due to chronic consumption of cassava roots. And this plant is also used in preparing certain medicines, homeopathic or maybe others. So these are certain food compounds which may lead to certain neurological disorders, and these have been researched and have been documented in WHO directory. Okay, so you can go and check also. I've taken this from there. I've given the reference in the end. Neurological disorders caused by nutrient deficiency, the macronutrient total energy needed, and then neurological disorders when deficient, the long-term mental deficit. So if in childhood the child is not getting proper nutrition, then there may be long-term mental deficit. Vitamins, vitamin B1 thiamine deficiency, RDA is 1.1 milligram. It may lead to beriberi, polyneuropathy, and Wernicke's encephalopathy. So you must have gone through these diseases in detail, just giving an overview. Vitamin B3 niacin, you know, deficiency leads to pellagra, including dementia and depression. Then vitamin B6 pyridoxine, its deficiency causes polyneuropathy. Vitamin B12, cobalamin, progressive myelopathy with sensory disturbances in the legs, and this is very common. Even in our population, vitamin B12 deficiency is very common. Folate and folate deficiencies in mothers may lead to neural tube defects of the fetus, then cognitive dysfunction in children and elderly. So this is also important vitamin which should be taken even by the mothers and in old age also. Minerals, iodine deficiency disorders, that also that is a separate topic, and we discuss in detail in community medicine, the iodine deficiency disorders. Iron, delayed mental development in children. Iron deficiency may lead to delayed mental development in children. Zinc, delayed motor development in children and may also lead to depression. Selenium, adverse mood states. So there are these all minerals and vitamins and nutrients affect our neurological system. So they are needed in certain amount. And if we do not take or is not given to children, the babies are undernourished or the mothers are undernourished, or in certain cases overdoses may also lead to neurological disorders. So we'll briefly go through the disorders, the classification, how they are divided. The headache disorders. Headache is a painful feature of relatively small number of primary headache disorders, some of which are widespread lifelong conditions. And here this figure shows how they are spread worldwide. So different countries of the world have different figures for this, but this is present around the world. Population-based epidemiological studies of migraine. Then epilepsy, disorder of brain characterized by an enduring predisposition to generate epileptic seizures and by neurobiological, cognitive, psychological, and social consequences of this condition. So epilepsy, it is just not a neurological condition, but it affects cognition, the psychological effect, and there are even social consequences of this condition on a patient and even on the family. The annual incidence of unprovoked seizures is 33 to 198 per 100,000, and the incidence of epilepsy is 23 to 190 per 100,000. Types of epileptic seizures, there may be generalized onset, clonic-tonic seizures, absences, myoclonic seizure types, epileptic spasms, and atonic seizers. And there may be focal onset, localized onset, local, neocortical, limbic, with ipsilateral propagation with contralateral spread, or secondarily, then these focal seizures may become generalized seizers. And even neonates or infants, they may have seizures due to different causes. So this is a brief description of what is epilepsy and distribution of global burden of epilepsy by age group and level of economic development. So this is how the developed regions is the topmost part of the graph, which is showing the developed, and then middle one is showing the low mortality developing regions, and high mortality developing regions is the lowest part. Okay, so in different age groups have different levels in different countries of mortality due to epilepsy. Then stroke, which is, as we said, the most common cause of disability and even mortality around the world. WHO defines stroke as the clinical syndrome of rapid onset of focal or global, as in subarachnoid hemorrhage, cerebral deficit lasting more than 24 hours unless interrupted by surgery or death, with no apparent cause other than a vascular one. So stroke is mainly vascular. Either there is blockage of a vessel, or there may be a hemorrhage, may be due to a rupture of a vessel. In developed countries, up to 75 to 80% of strokes are attributed to brain ischemia, and 10 to 15% of strokes represent primary intracerebral hemorrhage, and approximately 5 to 10% are subarachnoid hemorrhages. So mainly it is due to ischemia, the blockage of the vessel. The prevalence of stroke among population ranges from 500 to 600 per 100,000. So this is the stroke which is the leading cause of disability around the world, and second leading cause of death. Stroke incidence in selected countries. So you can see all age and age 45 to 84. As the age increases, the incidence of stroke increases. So certain countries have much higher incidence. That is because of their dietary factors, lack of physical exercise, and their lifestyle. Cerebral palsy, motor problems due to brain damage that may occur before, during, or after birth. The reason may be before birth, during the birth, the brain may be damaged, or even after birth due to anoxia. That is complete, the brain doesn't get the oxygen. General symptoms: muscular incoordination, postural balance problems, and then secondary impairment. And this is non-progressive. It is not progressive. The part of brain which is damaged forever, and the symptoms which are there forever. Hypertonia versus hypotonia. Traumatic brain injury. More and better epidemiological data can help in tailoring effective preventive measures against traumatic brain injury, with particular emphasis on reducing the impact of road traffic accidents. So if a head is hit by an external mechanical force, the brain will be displaced inside the skull and can be injured against the solid meningeal membrane, the dura, or against the inside of the neurocranium. So the head injuries are generally very traumatic, and around 90% of traumatic brain injuries are classified as mild, implying that patient is awake but may have loss of consciousness or a short amnesia. So mostly the brain, the God has protected our brain in a way that the traumatic brain injuries even don't affect much, but only 3 to 5% are severe traumatic brain injuries, meaning that the patient is unconscious upon admission, and then there is no guarantee that if the injury is severe, that the patient will recover, or he or she may even not recover. External causes of traumatic brain injury in selected areas. So here we can see that road traffic accidents are highest in Asia because of no rules and regulations of driving, and we don't fasten a seat belt, people don't wear helmet. So the brain injuries, or the traumatic brain injuries, are highest among the Asian countries where the rules and regulations are not strict, and in other countries comparatively these are low. Seizures, abnormal electrical discharges in cerebral neurons, imbalance between excited versus inhibited neurons. Epilepsy is the recurrent seizures. When the seizures occur recurrently, then that is epilepsy. Seizures may occur due to certain reasons, like when due to hyperpyrexia, when there is high grade fever, but those are temporary and those are not recurrent. But when there are recurrent, then it is said to be epilepsy. 3 categories: partial activation of one area of brain, generalized activation of the entire brain, and they may be unclassified, and sometimes the partial or the focal ones then progress to the generalized seizures. Shaken baby syndrome, approximately 50,000 per year and 25% die. Mental retardation, cerebral palsy. So this is when the parents or any family member who bounce the baby in the air just to for enjoyment, and then this may take the life of a child or even may lead to disability. Sudden infant death syndrome, the sudden death of an infant under 1 year of age which remains unexplained after a thorough case investigation, including performance of a complete autopsy, examination of death scene and review, examination of the death scene and review of the clinical history. So this is called the sudden infant death syndrome, when there is no cause, no evident cause of death of a child. The characteristics of sudden infant death syndrome: leading cause of post-neonatal death. So post-neonatal means neonate is up to 1 month of age. So after 1 month of age, 28 to 364 days of age, right? So between after 28 days to 1 year of age, this takes place and occurs suddenly without warning, often during periods of sleep. A child is sleeping and then suddenly dies, occurs during critical development period, and triple risk hypothesis is given to explain this. Back to sleep campaign, and after certain time of investigation and all the research, they did this campaign that back to sleep, that is when the baby, you put the baby to sleep, he should be on his back to avoid this death. American Academy of Pediatricians recommended this in 1992. Then 1994 National Public Education Campaign began. Then prone sleep position drops from 62% in 1993 to 20% in 1998. So the position, they said, that may affect the incidence of this sudden infant death. So sudden infant death syndrome incidence has fallen due to this up to 30 to 50%. So this may be the reason. Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is a universal disorder and it affects mainly the movement, with a crude incidence of 4.5 to 19 per 100,000 population per year, right? And the most common symptom is tremors. Crude prevalence estimates vary from 18 per 100,000 persons in a population survey in Shanghai, China, to 328 per 100,000 in a door-to-door survey of Parsi community in Bombay, India. So it may be higher in certain communities and low in certain communities. So there may be a genetic reason as well. Age adjusted rates give a more restricted range of 72 to 258.8 per 100,000 persons. Higher rates were reported from Caucasians in Europe and in North America, and intermediate rates for Asians in China and Japan, and the lowest rates for blacks in Africa. So here we found that certain diseases are very low in blacks in Africa, like here the Parkinson's disease, even the cerebrovascular diseases. If you had noticed in that chart which I showed you about the different WHO regions, the African regions, the region had the lowest incidence of cerebrovascular disease. So now we'll go on to the prevention, that how we can prevent these neurological disorders, which are the leading cause of disability and even death around the world. Primary prevention: measures to prevent the onset of disease or avoid a targeted condition. So primary prevention is mainly we target the risk factors so that the disease does not take place. Use of vaccine, here we'll go along with examples. Use of vaccine against poliomyelitis within a global polio eradication initiative has led to elimination of indigenous poliovirus. As you know, that polio has been eradicated around the world, and hopefully Pakistan also is targeting that and working on that. And you know that Dr. Khalid Shafi, who is in the Department of Community Medicine, Dow Medical College, he is the head of this polio eradication program for Sindh. And this year they have only got one case of indigenous polio in Pakistan in January, and after that there is no case. So hopefully we do not get any more case this year and then next year, and so we will also be able to eradicate it. Measures to control the blood pressure, cholesterol levels, and diabetes mellitus, to reduce tobacco use and to promote overall healthy eating patterns and physical activity are advocated for primary prevention of stroke. So cerebrovascular disease or stroke having the highest incidence, so for that we need to take measures to control the blood pressure, cholesterol levels, and then diabetes, and even the tobacco use. And then the healthy lifestyle should be promoted through health promotion activities so that people may be prevented from stroke. Wearing a helmet is the single most effective way to reduce head injuries and fatalities resulting from motorcycle and cycle crashes. So again, this helmet wearing, so these are some of the primary preventive measures for certain neurological diseases which could be taken to prevent the onset of disease. For example, vaccine against polio, and then the control of blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, even tobacco, and promoting the healthy eating patterns and healthy lifestyle, and then wearing the helmet to avoid the head injuries. So all these are primary preventive measures to avoid or control the occurrence of the neurological disorders. Secondary prevention is, what is secondary prevention? Secondary prevention is defined as early and accurate diagnosis, appropriate treatment, and the management of risk factors. So medical treatment of epilepsy with the first line anti-epileptic drugs can render up to 70% of patients seizure free when adequately treated. So early diagnosis of the disease, patient is diagnosed early and treated well, then we can prevent certain type of diseases. Management of patients with stroke by an organized unit significantly reduces the mortality and disability in comparison with standard care on a general medical ward. So as we were saying in primary prevention, to control the blood pressure, and if the patient is diagnosed with hypertension or diabetes and treated effectively, then he may be saved from stroke. The tertiary preventive measures: rehabilitation, palliative care, treatment of complications, patient and caregiver education, self-support groups, reduction of stigma and discrimination, and social integration. These are included in the tertiary prevention. Mainly we take rehabilitation, but all this is also a part of tertiary prevention. So intervention targeting stress and depression among caregivers of patients with dementia, including training, counseling, and support for caregivers, have shown positive results for management of dementia. Then the strategy of community-based rehabilitation has been implemented in many low-income countries around the world where it is practiced, and it has successfully improved the quality of life and participation of persons with disabilities in their societies. So if we rehabilitate the patient with stroke and with disabilities so that they are able to live a normal life, so that they don't become a burden on the society. This is a part of rehabilitation. Methods to reduce stigma related to epilepsy in an African community successfully change attitudes to epilepsy. Even in our country, we see that there are certain stigma associated with epilepsy. Traditional beliefs are weakened, fears were diminished, and the community acceptance of people with epilepsy increased. So when there is community acceptance for a certain disease, then only people go for early diagnosis and treatment and better output. Many neurological disorders run a chronic, relapsing, and remitting course. Such disorders are better managed by services that adopt continuing care approach, emphasizing the long-term nature of these neurological disorders and need for the ongoing care. So mainly the neurological disorders, once they occur, they run a chronic course, but if diagnosed early and given proper treatment, the patient may be prevented from a disability and death. A brief description of management of a neurological emergency. If a patient is brought to an emergency with a neurological complication, Then general principles are manage airway and breathing, circulatory support, pharmacological intervention, then psychological support for anxieties, and transport consideration. Take to a hospital with neurological capability so that early diagnosis is done and the treatment is started so that the patient is saved from disability or death. These are the references. If you have any problem, you can come to the department and discuss with me. And I hope I have discussed the topic and you have got and understood this, the global burden of neurological disorders. Thank you.